What if the person keeping you alive was the one who wanted you dead? You trust the scrubs, the badge, the calm voice that says, "I've got you." But what happens when that trust becomes a weapon? Tonight we go inside one of the most disturbing cases in modern medical history. Not in a dark alley, not in an abandoned building, under the cold fluorescent lights of a hospital ward, where the victims were already weak and the killer wore a stethoscope. Stay with me, because once you understand what was happening inside those walls, you will never trust a hospital the same way again. Stepping Hill Hospital, Stockport, England, 2011. A busy hospital, thousands of patients, hundreds of staff working around the clock to keep them alive. A place of healing. But that summer, patients on one ward started dying, and no illness could explain it. When the toxicology results came back, the truth sent shockwaves through the entire hospital. Someone on the inside was killing patients, and they had been doing it for months. Hospital wards at night have a particular silence. The lights dim, visitors disappear, the staff thin out. And the patients, elderly, sedated, dependent on whoever walks through that door, have no choice but to trust. That trust is sacred. It is also an opportunity. Among the night staff at Stepping Hill was a nurse named Rebecca Layton, 27 years old. Quiet, capable, but she was not the one investigators would eventually fix their eyes on. There was another nurse, a man named Victorino Chua, 49 years old, from the Philippines, experienced, well-liked by colleagues, trusted with the most vulnerable patients on the ward. And in his home, hidden where his own family never thought to look, investigators would find something that changed everything. A letter. We will come back to that letter. First, the patients. Between June and July 2011, patients began collapsing, their blood sugar crashing, catastrophically, for no medical reason. Doctors call this hypoglycemia. In its worst form, it causes seizures, brain damage, death, and it was happening to patients who had no diabetes. No history of it, no reason for it at all. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. And no one yet knew how long it had been happening. Hospital management escalated it to Greater Manchester Police. Investigators discovered something chilling. Saline bags, the most basic trusted fluid given to patients across the ward, had been tampered with. Someone had injected insulin directly into them. Insulin in the wrong dose, in the wrong patient. It kills. Silently. Quickly. 2 patients died. Tracy Arden, 44 years old. Derek Weaver, 83 years old. Real people, with families, with lives that mattered. A third patient, Arnold Lancaster, was poisoned and survived. Another patient was left with permanent brain damage. In total, more than 20 patients were harmed. Think about what that means. These people came to a hospital to get better. Some were recovering from routine procedures. They were not supposed to die. And someone deliberately put a killing drug into the very drip lines meant to heal them. Police arrested Rebecca Layton first in July 2011. She spent months in custody. But the case shifted. The charges against her related to the deaths were dropped. She later pleaded guilty to something else entirely. Stealing prescription drugs, serious. But not this. The real target had been someone else all along. As investigators studied the ward, the rotas, the timeline, one name kept appearing, Victorino Chua. And then came the letter. Inside his home, detectives found a handwritten document. In his own words, Chua had written, "There's a devil in me," and "I'm an angel turned into an evil person." A confession, written by his own hand, hidden where no one was supposed to find it. Chua was arrested in January 2012. Investigators discovered something damning. He was the only staff member present. Every single time something happened. When 5 patients were poisoned overnight in July. When contaminated ampules were discovered the very next night. When prescription charts were fraudulently altered months later. Every time, Chua was there. Forensic scientists tested the saline bags. Medical experts rebuilt the timeline of every collapse. Investigators cross-referenced every shift, every rotation, every name on every schedule. The evidence pointed to one person. Chua maintained his innocence. His defense argued the case had gaps, that the letter had been misread. The jury did not agree. After one of the longest trials in British legal history, 3 months in court, Victorino Chua was convicted in May 2015. Guilty on 33 separate counts. 2 counts of murder, 22 counts of attempted grievous bodily harm, counts of administering poison. Detectives who investigated him used 2 words: narcissistic, psychopath. The judge called his actions strikingly sinister. Truly wicked. He said Chua was an experienced nurse who used cunning. Victorino Chua was sentenced to a minimum of 35 years. He will not be considered for parole until he is 84 years old. But no sentence can undo what was lost. Tracy Arden, Derek Weaver, 2 people who trusted a hospital, trusted a system, trusted the person standing over their bed at 2 in the morning. Their families have spoken of the devastation, not just the loss, but the specific horror of knowing someone chose to do this while wearing the uniform of a healer. That betrayal, no verdict can undo. After this case, hospitals across the United Kingdom reviewed everything: staff vetting, drug access, how to spot unexplained patient deterioration before it becomes a pattern. This case changed procedures across an entire country, and here is what stays with me. The victims were not chosen for who they were. They were chosen for what they were: patients, vulnerable, trusting, unable to protect themselves. That is the darkness at the center of this case. Not a monster hiding in shadows, a person in a position of care, allegedly choosing to destroy the very thing they were trusted to protect. The night shift was never as safe as anyone assumed. Every hospital depends on something invisible: the assumption of good faith. Most healthcare workers carry that faith with extraordinary dedication, but this case proves something darker. Trust, however necessary, must also be watched. I want to ask you something. Should hospitals have stricter monitoring for unexplained patient deterioration, even when no one is under suspicion? Where is the line between protection and paranoia? Write your theory below, because the trust we place in a hospital bed is more fragile than anyone wants to admit, and we are just getting started. Welcome to the Null Sphere.